In January 2024, the International Court of Justice began its hearings for South Africa's case against Israel, accusing Israel of carrying out acts of genocide in Gaza. The ICJ is the highest court of the United Nations. The court has two roles. In this case, it is to settle, in accordance with international law, legal disputes between states. It also gives advisory opinions on legal questions referred to it by the UN and specialized agencies. The court has no legal ability to enforce its findings, though its findings do carry substantial weight in international institutions, and that can lead to things such as UN sanctions. So this case is incredibly important, but it's not going to definitively dictate what happens on the ground. Now, how is this, the International Court of Justice, different from the International Criminal Court? The ICJ is the main judicial organ of the UN, and it hears cases brought by states against other states, which is the reason why Israel is standing trial and Hamas is not. Israel is a state, whereas Hamas does not represent Palestine, and Palestine is not a state for some reason. This irony sucks. The International Criminal Court, or the ICC, it was never part of the UN. It was created via treaty by the UN and immediately made a separate and independent entity. This court deals with individuals charged with war crimes, crimes against humanity, and genocide. So the ICC would be the court for Israel to present a case against Hamas if it so desired. So, what exactly is the accusation here? South Africa is accusing Israel of breaking the rules of the Genocide Convention. The Genocide Convention was the very first human rights treaty ratified by the UN. It was established in 1948 in part to address the Holocaust and more broadly to solidify the international community's commitment to prevent and stop all genocides. Israel ratified the Genocide Convention in 1950. I want to take a second here to highlight this point, that breaking the rules of the Genocide Convention doesn't necessarily mean a state is actively participating in Holocaust-level genocide and elimination, but that it is currently taking steps we recognize as leading to that level. That is what prevention is all about. At the end of the Holocaust, the whole world was wondering, well, how the fuck did that happen? So we created these international bodies to investigate the steps, the law, the rhetoric, the justifications, the militarization that lead to this happening. So next time, when we see those steps in action, we have a place and a process to legally address it. So what actions are punishable according to the Genocide Convention? Under Article 3 of the Convention, the following acts are punishable.
A. Genocide. B. Conspiracy to commit genocide. C. Direct and public incitement to commit genocide. D. Attempt to commit genocide. E. Participation in genocide.
And what exactly do we mean by genocide? According to Article 2 of the Convention, genocide means any of the following acts committed with the intent to destroy, in whole or in part, a religious, ethnical, racial, or religious group.
A. Killing members of the group. B. Causing serious physical or mental harm to members of the group. C. Intentionally subjecting the group to living conditions intended to cause its physical destruction, in whole or in part. D. Imposing measures aimed at preventing the birth of children within the group. E. Forcibly transferring children from the group to another group.
Therefore, South Africa must prove that Israel has committed some of these genocidal acts against Palestinians, specifically those in Gaza, and that these acts either constitute genocide itself or the intent or incitement thereof. In addition, South Africa is calling for the immediate stop of Israel's military campaign in Gaza. Ceasefire now. On the first day of hearings, Thursday, January 11th, 2024, South Africa laid out its case against Israel. The following day, Israel defended itself against these accusations. I would like to spend some time detailing Israel's defense and responding to that. This is a summary, by no means comprehensive of the entirety of Israel's defense. But after watching the whole thing, which is 3 hours long, these were the main points I took away. Number 1, self-defense. Israel details the atrocities committed by Hamas on October 7th, 2023. In their opening statement, they give a detailed account of the atrocities suffered by Israeli civilians at the hands of Hamas. They also shared video clips of Hamas's violence on October 7th, clips of a larger video they gave court members to see. Number 2, no genocidal intent. Israel states that it does not have genocidal intent and that this is proven by them giving aid to Gazans as well as warning them before airstrikes. They speak at great length about the tremendous amount of resources they use warning Gazans before airstrikes, as well as food, water, and other resources given to Gazans. As for Netanyahu's remarks about Amalek, they were merely rhetorical. A way to boost morale for the soldiers and Israeli civilians alike. If you're not sure what I'm talking about, don't worry, I'll go over it in detail later. Number 3, Hamas must be eliminated. Hamas states in their founding charter that Israel must be eliminated. Therefore, they are intolerable neighbors that cannot be negotiated with. In fact, with their founding charter and their indiscriminate killing of Israeli civilians, it is Hamas acting with genocidal intent, not Israel. Israel is, in fact, the victim of genocide. Additionally, the high death toll in Gaza is due to Hamas's military tactics. They use civilian areas to operate and hide, so they must be attacked in civilian areas in order to be eliminated. If they would just fight out in the open, Israel wouldn't need to kill so many civilians, and the death toll would be much lower. So these are the broad strokes of Israel's defense, which I'd like to address. But first, let's go on a nerdy little tangent about just war theory. Israel purports that it has the right to self-defense, a notion that comes from the philosophy just war theory. Just war theory describes how and when a war can be justified. It's a theory that's been developed for thousands of years, and institutions like the UN have adopted it into international law. There are 3 main components: jus ad bellum, jus in bello, and jus post bellum. Please forgive my Latin. Working backward, jus post bellum refers to the post-war environment, ensuring that it isn't characterized by continuing injustice or suffering, no revenge, no collective punishment, and a responsibility to rebuild after the conflict. Jus in bello refers to the fighting itself, the so-called rules of war. Is the level of force being enacted proportional to the harm suffered? Is the force discriminating between combatants and non-combatants? Obviously, these questions have great relevance in this case, so put a pin in that. For now, I would like to focus on jus ad bellum, or can we go to war? The right to go to war in cases of self-defense is clearly laid out in this principle. If you attack me, I am allowed to defend myself and can justifiably do so with force if I have exhausted all other non-violent possibilities, and if I ultimately desire to re-establish peace. The right to self-defense is articulated by Article 51 of the UN Charter. However, we enter sticky territory when applying this to the Palestinian territories. The international community has recognized Israel as the military occupier of Gaza and the West Bank since 1967. So the question is, can Israel claim self-defense in an area it occupies? A quote now from Sartak Gupta, writing for Jurist from the University of Pittsburgh School of Law.
Israel, as the occupant, has the right to protect itself and its citizens from attacks by Palestinians within these territories. However, Israel also has a responsibility to maintain law and order, ensuring the security and well-being of the occupied population, as outlined in Regulation 43 of the Regulations Concerning the Laws and Customs of War on Land. This legal framework allows the use of force for law enforcement purposes, but emphasizes the need to prioritize civilian safety and use lethal force only as a last resort. These principles distinguish the right to self-defense from the right to police, both of which are governed by the laws of armed conflict and differ from peacetime human rights law regulations. Under international law, once the conflict takes place, jus ad bellum presides over it. Thus, following the regulations concerning the laws and customs of war on land, when an occupation is already in place, Western Bank and Gaza Strip, the occupying state, Israel, cannot use militarized force in response to an armed attack. It can only use police force to restore order.
So, as an occupier, it seems Israel has the right to police the territory, but not to use the military and to assert self-defense. Ultimately, international law says that if State 1 attacks State 2, State 2 has the legal and legitimate right to self-defense. But when a terrorist group who does not politically represent the civilians of an occupied territory attacks a state, is self-defense legitimate? Now, does this mean that Hamas can legally attack and kill 1,300 Israeli civilians? Absolutely fucking not. No one is arguing that. No one. But Israel's history of occupation makes this situation different than, say, Ukraine and Russia. When Israel claims self-defense, it is erasing both its history and present as a military occupier. I can't stress enough how essential this point is to the conversation. Hamas probably wouldn't exist if Israel wasn't an occupier. I'm not saying Hamas doesn't have any responsibility to bear here. I'm just saying that the context in which they were created is an essential part of this conversation. And that essential part is erased when we just view Gaza as a state like any other state. It's not. It's an occupied territory. Now, let's move on to the next part of Israel's defense, discussing genocidal intent. Buckle up, bitches. Israel denies that it has genocidal intent in Gaza and claims that this is proven by their assistance to Gaza. According to Israel, they've dropped millions of leaflets, have shared information about evacuation on their Arabic Twitter page, and have made over 70,000 phone calls telling civilians to evacuate northern Gaza before they commenced their bombardment. How much time Gazan civilians were given to evacuate before the bombardment commenced is debated. But the point still stands that some notice was given by Israel. Therefore, they could not have had genocidal intent. To this I say, yeah, of course. Of course Israel has publicly ordered evacuation. Of course Israel has provided some level of food, water, and aid. I would be in utter disbelief if someone claimed otherwise. Why? Because Israel is immensely aware of their public image on the international stage. So aware, in fact, that the Israeli government launched a public relations campaign in 2005 called Brand Israel. Brand Israel's goal is simple: to make Israel look better by appearing civilized, liberal, modern, and avoiding any conversation about Palestinians. They pay tens of millions of dollars to have campaigns in London, Tokyo, Los Angeles, San Francisco, you name it, showing how advanced Israel is, especially in comparison to its Islamic extremist neighbors. This is where we see Israel pay for all-inclusive holidays for NFL players and Oscar-nominated celebrities who hopefully share on their Instagram stories what a wonderful time they're having. This is where we get Gal Gadot posing for Maxim magazine to show off those sexy, sexy IDF lady soldiers. This campaign has also been the cornerstone of Israel's pinkwashing, a process in which a state parades their LGBT rights to appear more liberal and democratic, usually as a way to distract people from other issues. Matt Bernstein of A Bit Fruity did an excellent video on this process, which I will link in the description below. All of this to say that Israel is painfully aware of their public image. So I find the idea that Israel gave some notice and some aid entirely believable. But even with this notice, even with this aid, it still stands that tens of thousands of Gazans are dead. Hundreds of thousands are actively starving, and nearly 2 million have been displaced. This is not even to mention the fact that Israel told Gazans to go to a different location, that they would be safe there, and then bomb that location time and time again. So, Israel's given notice and given aid? Sure. Absolutely, yes. To what effect? A band-aid on a gushing artery. Now, about that Amalek thing, on October 28th, 2023, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was giving a speech to the Israeli people addressing the war, in which he said the following.
You must remember what Amalek has done to you, says our Holy Bible, and we do remember, and we are fighting. Our brave troops and combatants who are now in Gaza or around Gaza and in all other regions in Israel are joining this chain of Jewish heroes.
What Netanyahu was referring to was a passage from the Old Testament in which God commands King Saul to kill every single person in Amalek, a rival nation of ancient Israel. King Saul is told by a prophet,
I will punish the Amalekites for what they did to Israel when they waylaid them as they came up from Egypt. Now go, attack the Amalekites and totally destroy all that belongs to them. Do not spare them. Put to death men and women, children and infants, cattle and sheep, camels and donkeys.
There's over 23,000 verses in the Old Testament, and you choose the one that sounds genocidal as fuck. To this, the Israeli defense team said it is rhetorical. No one is taking this seriously, except... If we are to condemn Hamas for its indiscriminate killing of Israeli civilians, which I absolutely think we should, then we need to condemn this too. I'm not sure how you look at this and not see genocidal intent. I don't know how you do that. Although it was not brought up in the hearings, there are a few more details I would like to share regarding genocidal intent. Here you could see some pretty fucked up things that Knesset leaders have said that really smell like genocide. And they've been saying this stuff for years. I would like to point out that, at time of recording, no Knesset leader who has advocated for violence against Palestinians has faced serious backlash. Whereas the one Knesset leader who has vocalized support for South Africa's case, Alward, has faced immense scrutiny and has just been charged with assaulting a police officer in May of 2022. They suddenly really care about that assault that happened over 20 months ago.
Not only that, but Alward himself was beaten by police in 2021 for protesting the destruction of a Palestinian village in Jerusalem. Oh, the irony. At the same time, this was happening in Jerusalem.
In its defense, Israel contends that there is indeed cause for concern for genocide, but rather a genocide being waged against them. Now, I recognize that Hamas is terrifying, and the fear that Israelis feel is very real. It's very understandable. But that does not mean that genocide is being waged against them. Hamas doesn't have the power or the resources to enact genocide against Israelis. And even if Israel was the victim of genocide, that does not excuse them from saying genocidal rhetoric. We can't say, let's kill all the Germans because they did the Holocaust. That's why we have the Genocide Convention in the first place, to have a constructive framework for addressing these issues. Not that it matters to Netanyahu. He stated that he doesn't care what the court says, that he won't stop piss assault on Gaza. Furthermore, by Israel claiming that they are the victims of an anti-Semitic genocide, when they very much are not, it diminishes the gravity of real-life anti-Semitism. We don't need to make up anti-Semitic crimes. They're everywhere. And, at least in the US, they are very much more of a problem on one side of the political spectrum than the other. We should call out anti-Semitism where and when we see it, but we do not need to resort to hyperbole. Additionally, Israel claims to represent all Jews worldwide. It is the Jewish state, even though it's only about 70% Jewish, but anyway, Israel claims it represents the Jewish people. Then it pisses off the entire world by killing over 25,000 people in Gaza. This puts Jews in danger all over the world. This military campaign does not challenge anti-Semitism. It fuels it. Israel is not a fully Jewish state, and it does not represent the Jewish people. It endangers them. Lastly, Israel states that its violence in Gaza is necessary in the elimination of Hamas. They state that the elimination of Hamas is their uncompromising goal. Israelis maintain that they're not attacking Palestinians as a whole, but rather Hamas as a group. They argue that because Hamas states in its founding charter that they must kill Jews and destroy Israel, that they must be wholly eradicated. This argument is rich with contradictions. When defending itself, Israel claims that there is a clear difference between Palestinians and Hamas and that they are only after Hamas. However, the second that someone voices solidarity with Palestinians, we are immediately painted as supporting Hamas, as though they are one in the same. Israelis have said that Hamas represents the people of Gaza, even though they won like 40% of the vote in 2006, before most Palestinians in Gaza were born. Come on, are you joking? This constant changing of the goalposts, this constant muddying of the water makes it impossible to have a coherent conversation. It's maddening. Israel has said that this very court case is South Africa acting as Hamas's political arm for defending Palestinians against genocide. To which I ask, can you defend Palestinians without supporting Hamas? With this type of mindset, I don't think so. And I think that's the point. Furthermore, I did not know this until doing research for this video, that Hamas updated their Charter of Principles and Policies in 2017 to not be anti-Semitic. Okay, crash history course. Hamas was founded in 1987 during the First Intifada, and in 1988 they published their first charter in which they have religion very central, and they say that Muslims need to kill Jews. Not good, not rhetoric I endorse. However, in 2017, Hamas updated this charter in which there is no mention of killing Jews on the basis of their religion. This isn't a mistranslation or a purposeful misreading. They published it in English. They instead state that their enemy is the Zionist project, and that the Zionist project uses the state of Israel to enact its wishes. I would like to read point 16 of the charter.
Hamas affirms that its conflict is with the Zionist project, not with the Jews because of their religion. Hamas does not wage a struggle against the Jews because they are Jewish, but wages a struggle against the Zionists who occupy Palestine. Yet it is the Zionists who constantly identify Judaism and the Jews with their own colonial project and illegal entity.
So, does this excuse Hamas's actions on October 7th? Absolutely fucking not. No one is saying that. But the framing of this whole thing being an attack on Jews is a farce meant to evoke fear and weaponize it. That is why we must keep the focus on Zionism, occupation, and settler colonialism. That is the heart of this issue. As an American who grew up in the aftermath of 9/11, I find this talk of wholly eradicating Hamas disgustingly fascinating. Even in the war on terror, which killed millions of people and has been immensely criticized, there was never talk of killing every single member of a terrorist group. Even with massive campaigns of war and airstrikes and sanctions, the US never said that they wanted to kill every single member of ISIS or Al-Qaeda or what have you. We wanted to kill enough members to cripple them and to dissuade people from joining, but I think we knew that the mindset of killing all of them, of wholly eradicating them, would lead to bloodshed and instability that we didn't want, because that's where extremists are born. It's really sad when the military of the Bush administration has more reservations about war than you do. Now let's take this all back to just war theory and talk about jus in bello, justice in war. Namely, is the level of force proportional to the harm suffered? Well, Hamas killed about 1,300 Israeli civilians, and at time of recording, Israel has killed over 25,000 people in Gaza, over 10,000 of which are children. Does that seem proportional to you? No, but Israel claims it can't discriminate between combatants and non-combatants because of Hamas's military tactics. Hamas operates in civilian areas and uses human shields. Therefore, Israel has no choice but to kill the terrorist and the 500 civilians around him. Do you buy that? As a terrorist, you use a human shield, hoping that your enemy will recognize the humanity of the innocent person and not shoot. But Israel shoots, thereby demonstrating that they do not recognize the humanity of the Palestinian shield. Not enough, anyway, to not shoot. I want to take a step back and think more generally. I think politics of elimination is dangerous. I think it is inherently bad. I think when we hear politics of elimination, we need to immediately sound the alarm. Now, I have political enemies. Don't get me wrong. There are ideas and things in this world which I wish no longer existed. But I would never advocate for the elimination of a group of people, no matter what they think. It's dangerous. It's destructive. It leads to genocide. Instead, I think of the belief, the value, the ideology, what have you, that I find distasteful, and I target that, not the humanity of the person who has that idea. How can I deconstruct this belief? How can I highlight its detriments? How can I take away its power to convince people that it's unworthy of their consideration? This requires me to separate my logical thinking from my emotional reactions. There are groups of people who wish harm against me because of who I am and what I believe in, and that is scary. But I do not let that fear dictate my politics. I don't jump to reactionary conclusions, fight or flight, kill or be killed. That is not constructive. I let that fear inform my thinking, inform my actions. I investigate it. I analyze its legitimacy. I think it through. And I think this process is why pro-Israeli people are so sensitive to criticism, because their political message is fueled by fear, which is threatened by critical thinking. I think this is why, in part, we see such a massive crackdown on Palestinian solidarity efforts, because when you think about it, it starts to make sense, which means thinking about it is a threat.
Leve Palestina! Leve Palestina! Leve Palestina! Och krossa sionismen! Leve Palestina! Och krossa sionismen!
Och vi har odlat jorden!
Och vi har odlat jorden!
Och vi har skördat vetet!
Och vi har skördat vetet!
Vi har plockat citronerna!
Och vi har plockat citronerna!
Och pressat oliverna!
Och pressat oliverna!
Och hela världen känner till vår jord!
Och hela världen känner till vår jord! Leve, leve, leve Palestina! Leve, leve, leve Palestina! Leve Palestina och krossa sionismen! Leve Palestina och krossa sionismen!
Och vi har kastat stenar på!
Och vi har
A while ago, a Jewish person asked me how we could negotiate a ceasefire with Hamas if they're not conducive for peace. They've openly advocated for the killing of Israelis and they've killed innocent people, so how can we negotiate a ceasefire with them? To which I say, if these are our negotiating standards, Israel is not conducive for peace. Netanyahu and his coalition are not conducive for peace, not with eradication politics like this. And, unlike Hamas, Israel has the power to enact a permanent ceasefire. Israel had a temporary ceasefire before, and still stands today. A permanent ceasefire is a choice to say no to domination, to taking the first step toward peace, from which point people can decide what policies they want going forward. One state, two state, whatever. That's all a political discussion to be had after a ceasefire. A ceasefire itself is not political. A ceasefire is not political. It does not dictate what Israel must do after. It simply stops the carnage. It simply saves lives. A ceasefire is a humanitarian solution to a humanitarian crisis. What happens after that is up to us. Thank you for making it this far. I hope you learned something today and use this video as a jumping off point to talking to people about Gaza. Feel free to let me know what you think in the comments down below. I want to continue doing this video series on Gaza, so if you have a question or there's a specific topic you'd like me to cover, let me know. My name is Kara, and I care about the world. See you next time.
In a landmark ruling today, the International Court of Justice found plausible risk that Israel is committing genocide in Gaza and ordered provisional measures, but stopped short of calling for an immediate ceasefire.
Fucking A. Bitch, there's more? Yes, there's more, and there's going to continue to be more and more, and they're gonna hope that we get tired and that we tucker out and that after 150 days of this, we don't want to talk about it anymore. But you know what? We're still gonna talk about it. They're banking on you getting tired. which is why you gotta regenerate yourself. And you know what? Part of this process of making things like this is having an emotional reaction and then sitting with that for a while and then coming up with an intellectual reaction and then writing that out. And I'm just in the emotional part right now. I'm emotional right now. And that's okay. You're allowed to be emotional during this process. You don't need to be level all the time. Like, I just want to be real with you, y'all, because I think that's the thing. I think for decades we've been like, can't touch that shit. But I'm not Scott. There's professionals. There's so much being said on both sides. We really gotta leave it to the expert. Nah, I'm letting you know now. I have a degree in Middle Eastern Studies, and that's enough. I'm giving y'all permission to get fired up about this. You're allowed to. It's okay. And I feel like part of my mission, I think, now is to encourage that in others through encouraging it in myself, because I've definitely just been so dumbfounded that I've kind of just, I have gotten quieter over the years. And yeah, time to get the bitch back out. The bitch coming back out. Listen, y'all, I can code switch between my academic speak and my paragraphs and all of that, and then I can be real with y'all. And I think we're allowed to engage in this conflict in a myriad of ways, because it is impossible to be thorough, have all your T's tossed and your I's dotted and your... What I'm trying to say is the energies with which we engage in this conflict will be varying, as we are human beings with varying energies. And you know what? This is the energy I need right now. This is the kind of dialogue I need to, like, pretend y'all on the other side are going, yes, queen, while I'm talking, because we need to talk about Palestine. What the fuck? I've been afraid to engage like this because I don't want y'all to think I'm not taking this seriously. I am taking this very seriously. Girls gotta loosen up a bit sometimes. You know what I'm saying? Stress is not good for you. I don't need a doctorate to tell you that. And you know what? Genocide in Palestine ain't good, and you don't need an MD to tell me that. I hope that you can trust, anyway, from the first 40 minutes of my presentation and all of my sources listed and everything. I hope y'all can trust that I am taking this seriously, that I am being as transparent as possible and trying to look as critically at this situation as I can. So, hopefully that gained your respect, and I can now loosen up a bit, because girl gotta loosen up a bit. My God. My therapist told me I'm not allowed to burn out again. Ooh. Do what you gotta do to feel okay. Do what you gotta do to say what you need to say. I don't want to be afraid of Israel and of speaking out anymore, because you know what? If I'm wrong, what's at stake? You know what I'm saying? If they're wrong, 30,000 people are dead. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not the same way on the other side. You know what I'm saying? And I've already had the worst happen to me. I've already had the Israeli military's fingers up my vagina looking for drugs. So, you know what? If I could survive that, I could survive any other scrutiny they want to throw my way. So let's go. But that is a story for another day. On Friday, January 26, 2024, the ICJ came out with an interim ruling. That means that they're going to come out with another ruling later, but it might take months, years. It'll take a while. But the ruling now says that Israel is under investigation for genocide, that there is probable cause that they are committing genocide actively now, and that the ICJ has jurisdiction in this case. They do have the evidence to investigate genocide. They passed 6 measures that Israel now needs to abide by. And all of these measures passed either 15-2 or 16-1. Unsurprisingly, of those 2 is Israel voting against some things. But the one standout is not Israel. It's Uganda. Everybody be scratching their heads. Nobody fucking knows why this judge voted this way. Because historically, in the UN, Uganda votes for Palestinian liberation. This is what they've reported. I haven't fact-checked this yet, but Uganda has stated that they feel the Palestinian plight and have for a long time, and that their UN votes reflect that. So now they're looking at this judge from Uganda and they're like, girl, what are you doing? Their name is Julia Sebutinde, and Uganda has really separated themselves from this judge since the ruling came out. She voted against all 6 measures. All of them. This is a breakdown of the measures that the ICJ passed. When I say the vote was 15-2, that means that Israel and Uganda voted against it. When I say the vote was 16-1, that means only Uganda voted against it, and Israel agrees with this measure. Here we go! Number 1, stop killing Palestinians, stop blowing their limbs off, stop preventing births, stop the genociding, please, tone it down. Approved 15-2. Number 2, make sure the military don't do any genocide. Approved 15-2. Number 3, Israel's got to punish those who publicly incite genocide. Approved 16-1. In this measure, the court specifically brought up the Israeli defense minister. I'll round back to that. Number 4, provide water aid and other humanitarian assistance. Approved 16-1. Number 5, prevent destruction and don't tamper with any of the evidence. Approved 15-2. And number 6, Israel has 1 month to submit a report about these measures it has taken. Approved 15-2. Now, about public incitement of genocide, the court called attention to the Israeli defense minister Yoav Gallant. He's part of Netanyahu's far-right coalition. I'm just gonna let my girl Amy Goodman, love you, summarize what Gallant had to say.
The International Court of Justice President Joan Donoghue in The Hague quoted Israel's defense minister, Yoav Gallant, saying that as the war got underway, Gallant had said, "We have removed all restraints. We will eliminate everything," referring to Palestinians as animals.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So with this ruling, the ICJ now has the power to conduct this investigation for genocide. There is probable cause that genocide is occurring. But does it really have teeth? Is anything really going to happen? I mean, Israel was brought to the ICJ in 2004, and it was ruled then that the border wall in the occupied territories is illegal under international law. But Israel still has it. They just ignored the court. It's there. I've seen it. It's crazy. But do you remember at the beginning of the video when I told you the 2 different functions of the ICJ? Remember, it's quiz time, baby. In the 2004 case, they were doing the second thing, where they were just giving their professional opinion as an international institution. It wasn't a state bringing another state to court, as this case is, meaning this interim ruling has a little more bite. A lot more bite. This is a pretty fucking big deal. The South African team has called this a decisive victory, even though it falls short of a ceasefire. Why? Because implicitly there needs to be a ceasefire. How are they going to deliver the aid and deliver the water without the ceasefire? They're not able to get the aid because they keep blowing up everyone trying to bring them the aid or don't let them cross at all. So therefore, a ceasefire is implicit in their order to stop the genocidal stuff going on and to bring in the aid necessary to meet the people. By implication of the court's order, a ceasefire must occur. But you may be asking, why is there no ceasefire? And that's because of my country, the USA. Yeah, they have veto power on the Security Council as a permanent member of the Security Council. Let's break that down in case you're not sure what that is. The UN Security Council has many members, but there are 5 permanent members. They are Russia, China, France, UK, and USA. All 5 of those have the power to veto, to completely stop something in its tracks. If one of them says nah, it's dead. So the court, probably knowing that the US would use that veto power, decided not to pass a resolution for a ceasefire, giving the US the power to veto it. This is also a decisive victory because this means that the court has accepted South Africa's evidence that it presented in court. It believes the legitimacy of what they're saying. Essentially, this ruling has given the people the power to say that there is legitimate cause for concern of genocide in Gaza, and therefore we ethically need to divest from Israeli institutions. We need to separate ourselves from Israeli institutions until this investigation has concluded. This also means that citizens of specific countries can pressure their country to ask for a ceasefire, to stop selling arms to Israel, to stop giving them aid. For example, there's a UK law that says that they cannot sell arms to a country if there is probable cause that they're going to use those arms for genocide. And since Israel's under investigation for genocide, it seems likely that we should stop giving them guns to, kill the people. So, when you boil it all down, this is the ICJ giving you the power to ask for a ceasefire. Talk to your institutions, talk to your government. Tell them that, hey, this investigation makes me uncomfortable, and maybe we could remove ourselves from working in cooperation with this government until this investigation has concluded. You know, just to make sure that we're not complicit in this genocide. You know what I mean? Just in case. And then if they find out that there is no genocide, then hey, everything's fine, and we can give them all our money again. I mean, as I've been told by many a bootlicker, hey, if they have nothing to hide, then it shouldn't be a problem that they're under investigation. So you know what? Fine. If you're Israeli, or if you're Jewish, or if you're Zionist, or you have people around your sphere who are of that influence, I'm really sorry. Genuinely, I am really sorry. It sucks when something you believe in good faith is doing shit like this. That hurts, and I'm sorry. As someone who used to be devoutly Christian, it hurt my feelings to see my religion being used to attack people. It sucks. It sucks that my country is so complicit in this, and I didn't ask for that. And you know what? I have a degree in Middle Eastern Studies, don't you know? We spoke a lot about the power of reconciliation after things like this occur, specifically in genocide, and how forgiveness and reconciliation are a huge part of the conversation. And we're gonna get there. I don't want all Israelis to blow off the face of the earth. I don't want that. I want peace. I want humanity to be acknowledged. I want humanity to be preserved. And you know how you do that? Pop quiz, you know how you do that? With a ceasefire, girl, come on. This is our business as an international community. This is our business as human beings, recognizing the humanity of other human beings, okay? I want to end this video with a little game. Let's have some fun. Let's play a game. It's called Genocidal Bingo Delusion Edition. After the ICJ came out with its ruling, Netanyahu gave a 1-minute, 18-second speech about the ruling, and I thought we could take what we've learned today and see if some of these key points in their argument come up again. Let's take a look.
Israel's commitment to international law is unwavering. Equally unwavering is our sacred commitment to continue to defend our country and defend our people.
Okay, we're 10 seconds in, and already we love international law, and we gotta protect them people. Gotta protect the people.
Like every country, Israel has an inherent right to defend itself. The vile attempt to deny Israel this fundamental right is blatant discrimination against the Jewish state, and it was justly rejected.
And we're 22 seconds in. We got the self-defense argument, we got the Jewish state, and we've got discrimination against Jewish people. Okay.
The charge of genocide leveled against Israel is not only false, it's outrageous, and decent people everywhere should reject it.
This case is false and outrageous. Okay, go ahead, call that absurd. Next.
On the eve of the International Holocaust Remembrance Day, I again pledge as Israel's Prime Minister, never again. Israel will continue to defend itself against Hamas, a genocidal terror organization. On October 7th, Hamas perpetrated the most horrific atrocities against the Jewish people since the Holocaust.
We got Holocaust, we got never again, we got October 7th. Next.
And it vows to repeat these atrocities again and again and again.
That again and again and again remark, I'm going to go ahead and put that down under we're the real victims here.
Our war is against Hamas terrorists, not against Palestinian civilians. We will continue to facilitate humanitarian assistance.
We are giving them assistance. We are after Hamas and not Palestinians. Next.
And to do our utmost to keep civilians out of harm's way, even as Hamas uses civilians as human shields. We will continue to do what is necessary to defend our country and defend our people.
And we've got human shields, folks. That's a bingo! Genocidal Delusion Edition. Thank you very much for coming to the games. I hope y'all got a bingo too. I hope you know how to go out in the world and look for these bingos in the arguments you hear against a ceasefire. Because, girl, we ain't buying it. We know better now. So, to conclude, my name is Kara, and I care about a ceasefire. Free Palestine.